Shehan, thank you very much. And I know I kind of followed your road trip to Lubbock and all that was a part of that. In the end, was it much more than you could have? I know you went there and did a huge story as well about the program in the summer. What was it like for you this past weekend? Well, no audio. There we go.
Shehan, you got yourself muted.
That's my fault. That's my fault. Well, first, let me jump in and say I would not fire Lance Leipold, but let's go ahead and move on from that. So, it was so interesting, right? Because I've actually been at games at Texas Tech where like the crowd was maybe even a little louder and maybe controlled the game a little bit more. But I think that to kind of tell the story of this game, you have to tell the story of the whole week. And that's what I tried to do over at CBSSports.com. This was a moment in so many ways that was 17 years in the making. When you look at Texas Tech's home schedule, especially, like there were not a bunch of big time games this season. Everybody had the BYU game scheduled. I heard of people who came from far and wide. I know that, I talked to some people who had friends who met at the 2008 version of Raiderville, and now they're married and have kids and all this sort of stuff. Like this was a family event in so many ways. And it was kind of an introduction in some ways for the younger generation to how things can be at Texas Tech. Obviously, they've gotten the chance to watch their team elevate themselves to being one of the best in the country. But I think that this moment felt even a little bit different than that. And what I mean by that is, like, Texas Tech has never played for a Big 12 championship. Obviously, they've never made the college football playoff. They've never even won the Big 12 since the conference was founded in 1996. And I think that walking away from that game, it wasn't just necessarily excitement for that game and that day. It was more just hope and excitement about what this program can become.
Shehan, what do you think about the long-term effects of this game for BYU? Because, most defenses probably aren't as good as Tech's. Well, I mean, they're not, to expose them like that, but they did expose them, and you'll see a lot of those things again, especially when it comes to King on Bear Bachmeier for the rest of the year.
Yeah, look, I think that there's a couple pieces of this, right? One is I do think that Texas Tech is that quality of defense. If you look at metrics like SP+, like they are a top 5 defense in all of college football. And we even saw what they did against Utah, who has, I would argue a top 3 offensive line in college football. They completely shut them down offensively. So some of this conversation, like right now, it's a lot of focus is on, of course, BYU struggles, but I think that more credit than that deserves to go to Texas Tech for being really, really good. But the other piece of this as well is that BYU actually, we didn't necessarily think so heading into the year, but like they have an interesting slate to end the year with TCU and with Cincinnati. Those are 2 prove-it spots as well, just in the way that Texas Tech was previously. So I think that they have the opportunity to build their way back, but the playoff rankings come out tonight. I think that they're going to fall pretty precipitously. They were number 7 heading in. I think that's Utah sets a floor for them. They were number 13. And even though I think that Utah rates better than BYU in a lot of these metrics, it's a difference between a 2-loss and a 1-loss team, and BYU has the head-to-head. So I think that 12 is as far as they can fall, and that's going to at least keep them in position to stay alive. Now, I still think that we're going to get Texas Tech versus BYU in the Big 12 championship game, and I think it's going to be up to BYU. Look, again, you were uncompetitive through most of this game, and that's going to set a narrative about how people see you. That has to change by the time we get to Arlington.
Shehan, there were some things I thought I'd never see as a sports fan throughout my life, like 4 decades now. I never thought I'd see the Rangers win the World Series. They've done that. Never thought I'd see the Mavericks win the finals. They did that. They've been back, all that stuff. I feel like the one thing remains, I never thought, and this isn't from a fan point of view, just in general, I never thought I'd see Texas A&M football win a national championship. How realistic do you think that is at this point?
Yeah, well, I'll throw never see the Chicago Bears do anything of note. But anyway, it's
born after 85.
Well after 85. In fact. It's so I think that I go back to that LSU game, and that was the first moment that I was like, the way that Texas A&M carries itself is good enough to win a national championship. I do agree. This is a team that is good enough to win it all. And look, we can point to, players and matchups and all this sort of stuff. We can talk about the fact that they have one of the best receiver combos in college football, probably only behind Ohio State, but it's bigger than that. This is a team that is so freaking mentally tough. In that LSU game, for example, Marcel Reed had 2 interceptions in the first half, and they didn't blink one single time. They just kept moving forward. And I think that actually, when you talk about moving forward too, their top running back, Le'Veon Moss, has been out for a lot of the year. They just keep throwing new guys out there and finding ways around it. Like that's something that we've never seen from Texas A&M. We have never seen them be this tough. We have never seen them be this physical. We've never seen them overcome deficiencies and setbacks the way that this team is. And this is exactly what I envisioned, frankly, when Mike Elko was hired as the head coach at Texas A&M. He reminded me in so many ways of R.C. Slocum, but with the way that he was a former assistant at Texas A&M, he was a tough, defensive-minded coach, somebody who understands the culture of this place. The difference is R.C. Slocum didn't have access to more resources than almost anybody in all of college football, and Mike Elko does. So I think that this is a really good team. I think that when you talk about SEC teams especially, this is the most complete team in the SEC. Now, I still think that Ohio State for sure is a higher quality team at this point. And I think that Ohio State might be a higher quality team than everybody in college football at this point. But if you put them in a one-game scenario, I think that Texas A&M is one of the few teams that really has a chance to go in and win a national championship.
What are your thoughts about the latest with the mess, dysfunction, and craziness in Louisiana with Brian Kelly and the buyout and arguing whether or not they've fired him for cause or not and backtracking on perhaps what they said originally?
Yeah, I'd love to know which lawyers are going to get some billable hours out of this one, because be serious. The reporting that had come out was that LSU had offered him $25 and $30 million to negotiate down his $53 million buyout. Why on earth would Brian Kelly care about that? Right? Like, you see examples. So there's a couple reasons why a coach might negotiate down their buyout, right? One, they want a clean separation, and maybe especially if they care about a place, right? Sam Pittman at Arkansas, like, he'd like to frankly still be a part of the community. He might retire to that place. Paul Chryst at Wisconsin, similar deal, alum, former quarterback. The other reason to negotiate the buyout might be there might be a clause in the contract that requires you to search for new work after and hold another job for offset purposes. Well, if you want to get rid of that and just receive a lump sum short term, that's a good reason to do it. Well, if you're Brian Kelly, you don't care about any of that stuff, right? You're probably going to go look for another job regardless. And on top of that, like, you're not going to return to Louisiana. He's probably never going to step foot in the state of Louisiana ever again. This is just not a place where he ever cared to put roots. This is not a place that he ever cared to hold on to. And they also fired him very unceremoniously. So he knows he's going to be a villain for kind of the rest of his life in Louisiana. He doesn't care. So I just think that this is a silly thing for LSU to do. I think that if you thought that this was going to go well for you, you probably don't understand the situation very well. And I'm not a legal mind. I don't know how this stuff works always, but a lot of the time, if you sort of have this kind of wrongdoing, frankly, and it goes to a lawsuit, I mean, Louisiana might have to pay for both of their legal bills if they end up losing this case, and I don't see how they wouldn't.
Look, he can always gold belly in some gumbo if he wants to. So he doesn't. You're right. He does not have to go back. Shehan, do you think that this affects, maybe it's all of this together, that the governor is involved? They're trying to back out of this deal. If you're Lane Kiffin, especially if you're a big time coach that they may call, would this affect your enthusiasm for this job?
Well, here's what I'll say, right, is that Louisiana and Louisiana State University, like, it is arguably the most political job in the country. And what I mean by that is that, like the capital is an hour down the road. Everybody cares about LSU more than they care about just about it. Or actually, sorry, no, the capital is Baton Rouge. Sorry, apologies. Like, you are dealing with pressures in that state that are almost unique, even compared to the Alabamas or the Oklahomas. Like, this is a level where people in politics in Louisiana love to use LSU for their own purposes. We can go all the way back to Huey Long in the 1930s when you talk about governors and politicians getting involved in this and grandstanding and doing all this sort of stuff. So, like, you have to be up for that. Like, we talk about jobs that are political. This is the political job that there is. The thing that might give me a little bit of like, honestly, that might reassure me a little bit, I guess I'd say, is that they very quickly said, we got to hire a full-time president. We got to hire a full-time athletic director. These are going to be the guys you're working with. These are the guys that we're committing to. I think that helps tamp things down just a little bit. But here's the reality as well. And this is true at LSU. This is true at Auburn. This is true at Florida. This is true at Penn State. Like, if you're in a good situation right now, which, by the way, Lane Kiffin is, you got to start asking, is it worth changing something that's working well? Is it worth changing a situation that's good to step into something that could very quickly become a hornet's nest? And again, I still believe that Lane Kiffin is probably going to stay at Ole Miss. We'll see what happens. He's going to have great opportunities in front of him, but I would not be surprised if Florida and LSU and Penn State especially have to start going to their second, third, and fourth options.
Shehan, where were you, and what was your initial reaction when you saw the Omar Cooper catch for Indiana on Saturday?
I was walking around Lubbock, Texas, trying to get back to my hotel after the game, and I mean, it's just like, the thing that's so cool about this Indiana team is that it's built so differently than the one last year. Now, obviously, defensively, they're still really tough, but I mean, they sling the ball in a different kind of way than even we saw last year. I think that, to see them make plays like that in tight games against really good defenses, like, it's crazy. And I mean, I think that last year we saw these moments where Indiana, would struggle and get a little overwhelmed by the moments. Like, I don't think that that's been the case at all this year. This is a team that is, I think, more confident than any we've ever seen. I think that, Curtis Rourke is a really, really good college quarterback, but Fernando Mendoza has been a complete other level. So it's unbelievable what they've done. I mean, we kind of thought that last year was a magical season for Indiana. They've managed to one-up it. And especially when you start getting to this point in the season, you just got to survive to give yourself a chance.
Yeah, you do. It was a possible Heisman moment. Let's see how things play out. And an unbelievable catch to defy gravity. Absolutely.
You guys got anything else?
No, you got one more?
Yeah, one more. Big weekend for OU in Texas and the playoff and the SEC. Do you think it's an 0-2 weekend for the Red River Brothers in Arms? Do you think it's a 2-0, 0-2, or do you think they split? And if they do, which game do you think is more likely to be a win for one or the other?
I think it's 0-2. I think that, well, it's interesting, right? Because we've seen flashes from every direction from both these teams, right? We've seen moments where John Mateer looks like the best quarterback in the country. We've seen moments where Arch Manning looks comfortable and poised, but it's one of those things where now they're going to be playing aggressive physical defenses with 5 stars and NFL draft picks along the field. Like, how will they match up to that moment? I'm a little concerned, to be quite honest. The big question for me is in Alabama versus Oklahoma, which team is able to get the ball downfield over the top of the defense better? Because I think that both Oklahoma and Alabama are really good up front. It's going to be a question of whether Oklahoma can match Alabama and Ty Simpson going down the field. And from my perspective, I think the answer is no, to be frank. Texas, Georgia is also interesting because I do think that the switch they made, moving their center over to left guard and inserting a new center, I think that has ended up being a really good decision for them. I think that some of the improvement you've seen on the offensive line is real, but also the gap between doing it against Kentucky, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt is different than having to do it against Georgia this week and Texas A&M in the final week of the year. So I think that ultimately it's an 0-2 weekend for them, but this is going to be a week where I think we really start to clarify what the playoff picture looks like. If Oklahoma loses this game, I think they're out. If Texas loses this game, I think that they're the one team that will have a chance at 9-3 with the way that they end the year with 2 top 5 teams, but it becomes way, way, way harder. And then on top of that, let's throw Notre Dame going and playing Pittsburgh as well. That's one of their last couple of tests. If all 3 of those teams lose this weekend, I think that all of a sudden it shakes up the entire playoff picture.
Yeah, Texas, if they lose, would have to beat A&M.
Yeah,
and which 100%. Again, who knows with that one? But they would have no room. Zero room for error, but they have put themselves back in position. Shehan, great stuff. Love the story. You talked about how it was a 2-decade climb for Tech to put themselves in that position. And Raiderland, everything else in Lubbock was just fantastic, including the football team. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it.